Services at various government departments, including Home Affairs and SASA, are expected to face disruptions in coming days. It has workers at the State Information Technology Agency, which is responsible for IT services to government, strike over salaries. We're joined now by the Public Servants Association spokesperson, Reuben Maleka. Reuben, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Tell us more about the strike. When and why are you striking?
Good evening, Kathy, and good evening to the viewers at home. The PSA has entered into negotiations with SITA. It's quite from April up until now. We are at a stage where the employer has given us 5%. The PSA is stuck at 7.5% from 12% open demand. At this point in time, our members at SITA, they've embarked on picketing since last week, and the strike is intensifying as we are going forward from Wednesday, where we are going to have a total shutdown of all services within SITA. You'll not find any technician that can assist any department that is offline. So if any of the departments or any government entity would be offline come from Wednesday, they will not be able to be restored. So which means that the service departments such as Home Affairs, such as SASA, would be affected. It is unfortunate that we might see a repeat of another disruption of payment of social grants come month end if this matter is not resolved.
Reuben,
so we are trying.
Go ahead.
Yes, we are trying to engage with the SITA with earnest to find a solution, and that is why we have made a commitment that we are available at any time, 24 hours, to make sure that we resolve this impasse, because we would not want to see the poor of the poorest who require the services of the state, including social grants, being affected. It is not our intention, and we would not want to find ourselves in that space. Hence, we plead and we push to say that SITA must come to its senses, because all what we are asking is actually even far below the inflation, where we can meet and find a common ground. So we honestly believe that this is the only time that SITA must understand the plight of the workers, given that even out of their hard work, they've managed to get a profit of 6 billion in the past financial year.
Reuben, it sounds to me that in many respects you are holding not only the state entities that will be affected by the shutdown, but also the clients of these services, which are South Africans. You're holding people ransom over this protest, and you do it towards the end of the month. How can that be justified?
Look, it cannot be looked into the eye of things coming at month end. As I've stated, Kathy, I've started to say that we have been negotiating since April this year. So if we could have been negotiating for so long and the employer has not been, coming with a tangible offer that can be considered by members, it cannot be when we are in the month of October, then we start to look at whether it's month end or not. You've
clearly decided to strategically bring services to a halt or withdraw your services between Wednesday this week going into the following week, which is really leading us to end of the month. So you've chosen a critical period in the month to actually hold the strike.
Unfortunately, this is the moment that we had to give a notice to strike. Remember the other process that followed, the CCMA conciliation, the notice that we had to give. So it's just that it's unfortunate that it's going to be at the time when it will hit hard, when it's coming to a month end.
But Reuben, when we talk about reasonability here, right, we're also sitting with a situation where government has publicly stated that it's currently running at a deficit budget-wise. You're well aware of what those numbers look like. So even as things stand, we cannot afford to fund the government program for this financial year. It already is said to have an impact going into 2024. So SITA is not saying there are no increases at all. Why is 5% not good enough when clearly they'll be hard-pressed to find money for the 7%?
5% is far, it's not even inflation. As we speak right now, inflation is about 7%. So we're not even saying government in these negotiations, there could not be any compromise. We are simply saying that if SITA is serious, given that also the hardworking SITA employees, they've managed to make sure that SITA last year get a profit of 6 billion rand. So you cannot always look into the question of saying the employer does not have money. You must also look into the essence of saying what can make employees to be able to render a service. Because if these employees continues not to receive a proper increase, they will definitely one day not have money to come to work. We all know where the petrol price is. We know all the basic necessities where they are today. Some of them, as I speak right now, they get paid today. The following day, they must ask money for transport. So what kind of service would SITA be able to render with employees?
But is it fair that the poor people of this country should potentially suffer the consequences of what is a dispute between an employer and its employees? The impact and the ramifications of that are just incredible. And this happens, Reuben, in a context where over the last 2 to 3 months, there have been problems with grant recipients being able to receive their grants on time. We've seen the impact of that firsthand. Surely, as a union that represents the voices and the challenges of the working class, that should also be part of your priority. Why must they pay for what is effectively a dispute that they have nothing to do with?
The strike is the last resort. So we cannot, at this point in time, after done all the processes to avoid the situation. Because, really speaking, if PSA or members of the organization of PSA at SITA were just like reckless and they wanted to disrupt the services, they have long gone to into strike action. Since April, we've been engaging. We are still engaging. So we are trying by all means. We even gave a notice, a proper notice that is even beyond the required period of 48 hours. Because we are well aware of the impact that it will have on the poor of the poorest. And that is why we still believe that at any point in time, the employer must come to the table. We must find a solution. But the ball is not in our hands. The ball is in the hands of the employer to come to the table with a proper offer to avoid the impact of what is going to happen. And it's unfortunate because we cannot always avoid the strike simply because we are aware of its consequence. The consequence of the strike action is ultimately the one that will affect the poor. But we can always go back to say, who is the cause? And the cause is the employer who is not willing to accommodate the SITA employees who are really suffering, who are not capable to make the ends meet. So we are very reasonable. We can imagine that in this point in time when the inflation, the food, the petrol price where it is, we can even come to a point of saying the bottom line is 7.5%. That is far reasonable, and we believe that is affordable given the status of the financial status of SITA currently. They can afford 7.5%.
Reuben Maleka is spokesperson for the Public Servants Association.